big green snake Rayquaza first made an appearance in Pokemon Emerald, and in that game, you can't complete a solo minimum battles run because Rayquaza will get rolled by Roxanne and her Geodude. But in Pokemon HeartGold SoulSilver, there's no such limitation like that holding our danger-noodle back. In fact, we're in a pretty good position going through the game with the Pokemon like Rayquaza. It's 680 base stat total, putting it on par with a number of other legendaries like Mewtwo and Lugia. While it may trade off its defense, Rayquaza more than makes up for it with its sky-high attack. 150 attack and special can transform Ray into a sweeper, but in the instances where we have to tank a move or two, its lower defense and special defense may put us in a bit of a pinch. As we progress through the game, that's definitely going to be more apparent. Another point that's worth bringing up is the chosen nature of Rayquaza. On a site like Smogon, Jolly or Adamant are recommended to boost its attack or speed respectively. For us, I ended up settling on a naive nature which boosts speed at the cost of lower special defense. This took multiple resets and I was more focused on decent attacking IVs than anything else, but this is the Rayquaza that we've got. If we take a look at its learn set, Twister is the only dragon move that we will naturally learn until reaching level 50 and gain Outrage. Not great, there are enough TMs in the world and a decent enough move pool to pull from so that we're not in too much danger. If anything, having dragon type moves really only starts becoming relevant for Clair. Aside from that, Rayquaza, like most legendaries, can learn some of the best moves in the game. It's not so much a question of if we'll use them, but just when. With that, let's check out the rules. This is going to be a solo minimum battles run, which means we can only use Rayquaza in battle, but we can capture other Pokemon for HM Butler purposes. We can only participate in battles that would stop us from progressing the game. If it's a wild encounter, we have to run away. We can't use items in battle. Held items are fine. We'll need to make it through the Elite Four without saving. Now, starting the game, we kick off our adventure as mentioned, but we are busy resetting for a decent Rayquaza with a focus on strong attacking IVs. Rayquaza's Dragon Flying typing, along with its literal godly base stats, means that I don't anticipate the Johto portion of the game, aside from the Elite Four, to be much of an issue, but I'm always willing to be surprised. At Violet City, unlike in Gold Silver Crystal, we're forced to climb Sprout Tower. This is good because we can engage in a few more battles for XP and also get the HM for Flash, which will make navigating Rock Tunnel later on much less of a pain in the ass. By the time we reach Falkner, Rayquaza's, let's just call it Ray from now on, is at level 9, so the same level as Falkner's first Pidgey. We still only have Twister, a 40 base power dragon attack as our only attacking move, but with Ray's sheer attacking might and stab, Pidgey doesn't stand a chance, though it does take 2 hits to defeat it. For Pidgey's defeat, Ray levels up to 10 and Falkner then feels his Pidgeotto. It looks like it's going to be a 3-shot because Twister takes us just under half of Pidgeotto's HP. In the end, it's more than that because of course in the remake, Pidgeotto has Roost, which will restore half of its HP. Upon defeating Falkner, we received the TM for Roost, but unfortunately Rayquaza can't even learn it. In Azalea Town, we've got the Rockets at Slowpoke Well to deal with before we eventually head over to the gym and Bugsy. Unlike in Gen 2, Bugsy's Cypher is much more dangerous this time around, with moves like Quick Attack, Focus Energy and U-Turn, and unlike in those gens, Bugsy will lead with Cypher. Ray's just at level 13 and close to 14, and you can see, even with moves like Quick Attack, Cypher's putting up some good numbers, especially when it's using Focus Energy. Meanwhile, our Twister really isn't causing enough damage. Combine that with Bugsy's Berry and we're just not able to output enough hurt to make the battle viable. I tried the battle a couple more times until it's clear that we should just take a shot at the rival instead. This goes much better. Against Ghastly, as long as we're not put to sleep, we should be fine. Ray uses Twister, that comes close to knocking Ghastly out, but then we get a Spite, which is, well, just fine by us. After that, just another Twister knocks it out. The rival then feels Zubat again, shouldn't have too much of a problem here. We use Twister, not that we've got anything else right now, but then Zubat confuses us. While we don't hit ourselves on the next move, the rivals are going to send out Croconaw next. And why Croconaw? Well, it'll eventually learn Ice Fang, which will be causing problems later on. Right now though, Croconaw is mercifully more interested in dropping our speed than it is attacking. We end up not hitting ourselves in confusion, but Twister really ain't great damage wise. Despite all that, we just keep plugging away with Twister until eventually Croconaw's defeated and we finally learn a new move for Ray, Crunch. It's time to give Bugsy another go. Instead of Twister, we'll be starting with Crunch, which is 80 base power when not taking into account stab. It's doing much more respectable damage now. Though Cypher does an admirable job of taking us over half HP, it can't stand up to the power of Ray's Jaws, and just after 3 of them, we've gotten past it and to Bugsy's Metapod. I mean, there's not a whole lot to say about the remaining Pokemon. a Metapod and Kakuna aren't exactly competitive Titans. Why they didn't take this opportunity to swap them for some Gen 2 specific mons, I don't know. But Kakuna does poison us, so there is that at least. We're on our way to Goldenrod after picking up a Pryce and teaching it Cut. Something worth noting around this time and around this area is that there are a number of things we can and can't do in the remakes. For instance, you can find the trainers in the underground in Gen 2 because they're still there later on when you do the rocket section of the story. That is 2 fewer battles when we potentially need them. Along with that, you can't proceed up the route to the park ever because you can't dodge the trainers. This means you can't get the Quick Claw or some of the TMs around that area. It doesn't particularly matter for Ray, but it does have an impact on other solo rungs. I can't remember if during the rocket section you could pick up the coin purse, but I can't recall. No, actually, because you get the coin purse from the actual place you're going to play Vault or Flip in this one, so it doesn't matter. Anyway, you may be thinking, don't you have to go up and speak to the girl about the Sudowoodo? Well, not in the remakes. You can just visit the house after defeating Whitney, and her sister or whatever will give you the bottle. You do, however, have to backtrack to Violet City and approach Sudowoodo from the east. So with that said, there are 2 mandatory trainers in Whitney's gym before we get to the leader herself. The Clefairy won't be an issue outside of a crazy metronome look. If things go really badly, we could even buy some powerful TMs like Thunder or Fire Blast from the Goldenrod department store. We don't need them though, but Clefairy does end up metronoming Rock Throw because of course it does, and an attack later, it's down. Then we've got the Milk Tank, and you may think, hey, I bet Rollout's going to be a problem. You'd be wrong. What's worse than Rollout, if you can believe it, is Stomp, because every time this Milk Tank was using Stomp, it was causing Ray to flinch at a 30% chance. Ridiculous, but it's nothing some good old-fashioned Perseverance can't solve. And Fire Blast. Let's get a beef brisket going. For Clefairy, we still stick with Crunch, which is safe enough. Clefairy uses Skill Swap, which won't be too relevant, so we can KO it without taking any damage. Now, for Milk Tank, we're not wasting any time. Fire Blast does just over half damage, exactly what we needed. Milk Tank uses Stomp, of course, we're flinching. Next time, however, we survive and can use a final Fire Blast on Milk Tank. As I said, we've got to take a real circuitous route to deal with Sudowoodo, but it's a battle that we can just run away from. Anyway, much like in Crystal, the rival is waiting for us in the Burn Tower. Unlike in Gen 2, instead of a Haunter, his first Pokemon is still a Ghastly. Though we are 1 level behind it, we do have Crunch, and that will absolutely one-shot this thing. But remember when I said we chose Croconaw to make things more difficult? Well, here is where that happens. The rival's level 22 Croconaw now has Ice Fang, which is double super effective against Rayquaza. Not only does it do a ton of damage, but it also gets the freeze on us, so we are definitely not winning this one. In retrospect, I should have gotten Thunder instead of Fire Blast, because now we don't have enough to purchase it anyway. Also, returning to Goldenrod is just such a convoluted process. I figure we can probably just brute force this battle. This time, and I wouldn't be right very soon, it was the best option. For Ghastly, just like before, we'll be using Crunch. Now, for Croconaw, we'll be getting extremely lucky. Just as it was in the battle in Azalea Town, Croconaw, for some reason, doesn't use Ice Fang and instead keeps using Scary Face to lower our speed. And it keeps doing that as we continue to just use Crunch. An extremely stupid play, don't ask me why, but we end up defeating it. Leveling up to 20, we do allow Ray to learn Hyper Voice, which is an 80 base power normal special, which is fine. We do have Return, but I'm saving that because I'm guessing we'll have to overwrite a fair few moves in the late game. Either way, Zubat's not going to give us much of an issue. We're slower, it shoots Supersonic, but we make it through and knock it out. Likewise, for Magnemite, we still have Fire Blast, so it's not all bad. Of course, it paralyzes us, but in the end, it doesn't stop us from taking the W. For Morty, Ray has Crunch, and while it doesn't quite have the levels Morty's Pokemon have when first entering the gym, we are just 2 levels away from his Gengar. Crunch will one-shot the majority of Morty's Pokemon, I assume. It did for Ghastly, but Gengar's a question mark. Turns out that Ray can't one-shot the Gengar, and it's not faster than it either. We come close, but Gengar then heals. Good job it didn't go for Hypnosis. Next, it moves first and uses Shadow Ball, and we are knocked out. Fair play. A few tries later, things do go in our favor. Ghastly's a one-shot, of course. This time against Gengar, it goes for Sucker Punch, which barely scratches us. But we discover that Crunch seems to be a range. We were either rolling low or got a really high one on that turn. Now, the battle's basically over. Morty's remaining Pokemon are all Okos, so we are all good. Now, you'd think Chuck would be next, and you'd be right, but I made a mistake. It was a mistake that first reared its head against the rival's Croconaw, and we're really going to see it come into play against Chuck. Anticipating it could be a difficult battle, I cleared out the mandatory trainers in the Lighthouse for the extra XP, before eventually crossing the ocean. We've only gained just 2 levels since defeating Morty, and even Chuck's first Pokemon, Primeape, is 4 levels above us. Primeape's a problem for a couple of reasons. It loves using Double Team, which makes it increasingly harder to hit. It also has Rock Slide, which will do well over half to Ray. Ideally, we want it to either use Leer or Double Team so it's not hitting us. Neither are great options, and we don't have any useful attacks either. Ray won't learn Air Slash for a while, and that would have made the battle trivial. When we're getting through to the Poliwrath, things get worse. It has Hypnosis, which he'll use pretty regularly, followed up with Focus Punch. It also has Surf and Body Slam. They have no problem chipping our health away after a bunch of retries in an attempt to find some consistency. It's basically non-existent. We can get past Primeape okay sometimes by using 2 Hyper Voices when it makes the range, but then we have no moves to combat Poliwrath. It just does a better job of shaving off health. If I had Thunder, this wouldn't have been an issue, but I don't have the Pokédollars for that. Eventually, I just give up, because honestly, we have a better chance with Pryce or Jasmine right now, so that's exactly what I do. We return to Olivine and hand off the potion to Jasmine, then pay her a visit at the gym. A move like Fire Blast should absolutely trivialize this battle. Against the first Magnemite, we'll use Fire Blast. When that's done, we're of course getting the Steelix. Will Fire Blast one-shot? Comes close. After missing our second one, we then get hit, and that is a lot of damage. We somehow hang on, and our next Fire Blast hits. Jasmine will then field her final Magnemite, which we do end up hitting, thank God, before we've picked up our next badge. Even though we've only gained 1 level in between fighting Jasmine, we do have enough money to go and purchase Thunder, and the difference is night and day. Against Primeape, while I deliberate on which move to use, we eventually pick Hyper Voice, and it's now causing just over half damage, whereas it was a bit of a dice roll before. This means we can get through it without taking a hit, and on to Poliwrath. Now that we've learned Thunder, Poliwrath should be easy, right? Well, it starts well with Thunder hitting and putting on the hurt, but then we get put to sleep. Ray ends up snoozing for several rounds, tanking some hits, but it eventually decides to wake up, use Thunder, and end the battle. Much easier than last time. Now there's everyone's favourite Team Rocket hideout bit before facing Pryce. We are thankful for the experience, but not a big fan of the tedium. The good thing about Pryce's Pokemon is that Thunder is still useful for Seal and Dugong. However, all of Pryce's Pokemon have an ice move that is double super effective against Ray, so we basically cannot take a hit this entire battle or get lucky with the misses. Thunder will Oko Seal when it hits. Problem with Dugong is that it likes to use Icy Wind to drop our speed and then attack at the gain the KO, and it looks like Thunder may be a range. On a good run, what we need to happen is that we actually hit with our first Thunder against Seal, then when it's down and Pryce brings out Dugong next, we not only hit, but we make that range too. It's not impossible and just took a couple of retries. Against Piloswine, we have Fire Blast, but I wasn't sure whether it would Oko. In the end, didn't have to worry about that because we end up critting, and I don't fancy retrying just to see if we can actually make that consistent. So for Clair, it's kind of annoying because the only dragon type move we previously learned was Twister, which is kind of trash for Clair's bulkier dragon types, and we only get access to things like Dragon Claw and Dragon Pulse after Clair's been defeated. For now, our best bet is just Blizzard. One remaining issue is Kingdra, which we do not have a move for. Against Gyarados, as long as we hit, a move like Thunder being double super effective makes it easy every time. Then, for Clair's Dragonair, we need to be hitting with the Blizzard's first turn because they'll always like to paralyze us, which would end up being rather bad. And then there's that Dragonair which has Ice Beam 2, I think. But then there's Kingdra. It's got Dragon Pulse, and that will put up some devastating numbers against Ray. Easy 2-shot for it. Plus it has other annoying moves like Double Team and Smoke Screen, which sucks for us. There is a way through though. It requires a bit of luck, but not a ton. Thunder has a 30% chance to paralyze, and then there's a 50% chance that the Pokemon won't be able to attack. If that happened with Kingdra, we'd be in business. So with Gyarados, things haven't changed. We've still got that Thunder, which is capable of one-shotting it. Then Clair will pivot to her 2 Dragonairs. As long as Blizzard ends up hitting the first turn, then they can cause us no problem either. Now, for when Kingdra comes out, we need to not only hit with Thunder, but also paralyze. And Kingdra would then not have to attack. Well, we go for Thunder, and it misses. Kingdra then keeps wanting to hit us with Smokescreen, while we try to fire off a Thunder. And we just can't seem to hit this thing. About 3 turns later, Kingdra switches to Dragon Pulse, which does a ton of damage and leaves us on just 19 HP. But then we finally get that Thunder to hit. While the damage is just under half, we do get that paralysis to proc. Next turn, we outspeed and do go first and hit, but we're still not doing enough damage, and Kingdra's healed with its berry. But then it's paralyzed and we may have a chance. Instead of rolling the dice with Thunder, I go for Hyper Voice. It ends up hitting and we have managed to defeat Kingdra, but oh boy, was there a lot of luck involved in that battle. However, unlike in the Gen 2 games, we can't simply head on over to Victory Road and the Elite Four. Instead, we now have to face the Kimono Sisters. No longer can we fight them one by one in their dance theatre, but we have to take them on in successive battles, which can be rather difficult. With no means to heal in between each fight, we need to ensure we can actually survive the damage we're taking and have enough move coverage too. We've basically kept our move pool unchanged since Clair, with Thunder, Blizzard, Crunch and Hyper Voice. Not really a great selection to cover everything, but we may just be able to do it. After trying the sisters maybe a couple of dozen times, I finally landed on a moveset and game plan that kind of works. Against Umbreon, we now have Focus Blast. When this hits, while it won't one-shot the Umbreon, it will cause enough damage, so that, combined with another attack, we can one-shot. We do then get hit with a Dark Pulse, but at that damage, it should allow us to ride out the remaining fight. Espeon has never really been an issue because we have Crunch and thankfully outspeed it, so it's an Oko. Against the Flareon, now that we have Surf, we are able to one-shot it too. No problem. Jolteon is an issue though. It's obviously quicker than us and our best move is probably Crunch. It'll take 2 of those to KO Jolteon. If it doesn't attack on one of those 2 turns it gets, we can usually get by. This time, we see double team first turn, which isn't terrible. Its next turn, Jolteon uses Thunderbolt and leaves us on 64 HP, but we've still got one Pokemon left, Vaporeon. For this fight, we just need Thunder to hit once, which it does, and that is the Kimono Sisters dealt with. And we're not going to have very many opportunities to gain much more XP before we are finally facing off against the Elite Four. Against the Elite Four, I thought we'd have a decent advantage against the majority of the Pokemon we'd come up against. For Will, we obviously still have Crunch, which should put in some good work against his Psychic Pokemon. While it is capable of one-shotting the likes of Xatu and Jinx, when Exeggutor's out, Crunch isn't the best play, but I'd learned that Air Slash is. For Slowbro, it's pretty bulky, so I figure we can go for Thunder, and if it ends up surviving and using Curse or Amnesia, then we just respond to that with either a physical or a special attack. Doesn't matter this time around though, because Reflect was still up from Exeggutor. The final Xatu did take a couple of hits, but going forward, when we're retrying this, Reflect will only really determine how we defeat the final Xatu. All in all, Will won't be too much of a problem going forward, so there's not much point wasting any more breath talking about him. Koga, however, is still a bit of a joke. First time round, I wasn't laughing though. Our best move against Ariados is Air Slash, which will always be a one-shot. For Forretress, it probably would have made more sense to have taught Ray Fire Blast. Instead, the first time in, I'm just trying a bit of everything to see how the damage is lining up. While we don't see Explosion from Forretress, thankfully, it is able to just keep chipping away our HP. This means that when we eventually defeat the Forretress and Koga sends out Muk, our health ain't looking great. And Muk is able to quite easily KO Ray, but it's nothing that a few retries won't solve. We do a bit better next time. For Ariados, we're still using Air Slash to take it out in one. I've now since taught Earthquake to Ray because I figure it'll come in handy against Muk, and we don't need a dark move like Crunch going forward for the rest of the Elite Four. My plan's still not cemented against Forretress, but it's starting to look like just sticking to Air Slash for a 2-shot should be the plan going forward. At level 45, however, and against Muk, it seems like Earthquake is a range. Muk has Black Sludge, which will recover a bit of HP each turn, and Koga will also use a full restore too. But with a combo of just Air Slash and then pivoting to Earthquake, it will mitigate those ranges, and we are fast enough to get those 2 hits in. For Crobat, we know it's gonna outspeed and it'll always love using Double Team. While if it used Toxic, it could be annoying, its other moves aren't really effective. So we're just stuck there, spamming Thunder until one of them sticks and gives us the Oko. Koga's final Pokemon, Venomoth, was obviously saved until last because it ain't got anything against us. We are quicker and just one Air Slash is enough to take it out. So it doesn't look like Koga will be much of a roadblock either, but there is room for improvement. For Bruno, I'm not really anticipating any problems at all. We still have Air Slash for his fighting Pokemon and Earthquake for the Onix too. The only way that Hitmontop can damage Ray is if it uses Quick Attack, but then we'll just go for Air Slash and that's it taken care of. Surprisingly, Onyx won't be a one-shot, even though we have a super effective move. I kind of forget that Onyx does actually possess excellent defense, so Blizzard probably would have been a better move. Even though we have Focus Blast, its lower accuracy always has me shying away from using it unless we absolutely have to. Bruno's next Pokemon, the Hitmonchan, much like Hitmontop, can be defeated with just one Air Slash. Machamp, however, I'm a little skeptical there, and it turns out that I am correct. Air Slash, while doing awesome damage, can't quite do enough. Machamp will get the healing from its berry, which means Koga shouldn't heal it, but we do tank a Rock Slide, and it is super effective. Aside from that, we're kind of all good, because when Machamp's defeated, Bruno just has Hitmonlee. It ain't quicker than Ray, and we've got the Air Slash lined up. Another victory in the books, but how are we going to fare against Karen? It's probably the Umbreon I'm most worried about. Our best move technically is Focus Blast. I don't think it'll one-shot, and with moves like Double Team and its general trolley nature, we could get stuck on it. In the very first battle, we might as well start with Focus Blast. Surprisingly, it hits, but unsurprisingly, we're just not able to knock it out. And because it's in red bar, Karen's gonna use a full restore. So next turn, I switch it up to Earthquake, which isn't even capable of doing half. Wow. And then I just decide to return to Focus Blast, which thankfully hits and knocks Umbreon out. Not as bad as it could have been, I guess. Ray levels up to 47, and Karen will then pivot to her ace, the Houndoom. We do have a super effective move in Earthquake, but Houndoom is probably gonna outspeed. Turns out Houndoom doesn't outspeed, and our Earthquake will be an OHKO, thanks to Houndoom's trash defense. Now the Murkrow's out next, and this thing is trash in Gen 2. Here, it's a little less trash and should have been an easy one-shot if Thunder would have just hit. But because we keep missing and Murkrow switching it up between Fate Attack and then Sucker Punch, this little thing is actually managing to take a fair chunk out of our HP. By the time I get Thunder to land, Murkrow's taken us down to 35 HP, and there's still a Gengar and a Vileplume remaining. I'm really deliberating about which move to use when Karen fields Gengar. I wish a move like Earthquake would still hit, but not anymore with Gengar's Levitate ability. While I do settle on Air Slash, I'd later learn that the crit we get absolutely mattered, and we were lucky that Gengar used Spite instead of an attacking move too. Thankfully, we get a bit of a reprieve with Karen's final Pokemon, the Vileplume. No chance this thing will outspeed us, and just one Air Slash will absolutely take us across the finish line. But in all honesty, it was never going to be any of those Elite Four members that would make this difficult. It was always going to be Lance. With the tendency for a lot of legendaries and pseudo-legendaries being dragon types, the affinity for some of the toughest trainers to use these Pokemon, it can be a struggle when they've all got super effective moves. In our case, we at least have a move like Dragon Claw or Dragon Pulse to teach to Ray. Coupled with the Dragon Fang held item, I'm hoping it gives us the edge that we desperately need. I decided on Dragon Pulse because Dragon Claw feeds into a strat I'm thinking about using later on, and Ray's attack and special attack are roughly equivalent, so it shouldn't make too much of a difference. For Lance's Gyarados, we still held on to Thunder because as long as it hits, it's always going to be a one-shot. With Gyarados also partial to using Rain Dance turn 1, it really doesn't matter if Thunder hits the first turn because we get another bite of the cherry the very next turn. The issue comes with the Dragonites. Ideally, our Dragon Pulse will be one-shotting. I don't want to tank any Blizzards or Outrages or getting paralyzed either. Lucky for us, at level 48, Dragon Pulse will indeed one-shot a level 49 Dragonite, both of Lance's level 49 Dragonite. But then there's Aerodactyl. Because that thing has Rock Slide, and in addition to doing a boatload of damage, Rock Slide has a chance to flinch. The first time around, even though we have not taken a single hit from Lance's previous Pokemon, Aerodactyl is quicker, hits us with Rock Slide, which is doing well over half, and getting that flinch. The battle is over. We can't survive two of those things, so we are sent right back to the beginning. But it's not all bad news. It's not terribly difficult to get ourselves back to Lance a few attempts later, and what I want to know most of all is how Dragon Pulse will stack up against a level 50 Dragonite. Next time, when we face Aerodactyl, our Thunder finally hits, and it will OHKO the Fossil. But then there's the Dragonite. While we are faster, Dragonite is able to tank a Dragon Pulse in red bar, and will then use Outrage. Because we've already taken a hit from Rock Slide, it KOs us without any issue. Oh yeah, and there's still the Charizard that we haven't seen either. However, we have an answer to that particular problem. So all we have to do is just keep trying again and again until we make it back to Lance. We just need a little bit of luck on our side this time. Much like before, the game plan hasn't changed for Lance's first three Pokemon. For Gyarados, we'll be sticking to Thunder for that one shot, Likewise, for the next two Dragonite, we'll just stay with Dragon Pulse because we know there's no ambiguity with the ranges there. But the question is Aerodactyl going to play ball? When it's sent out, we go for Thunder and it has to hit. Aerodactyl uses Rock Slide and we avoid the attack, and then our Thunder hits. That's one scary part over. But next, we have Dragonite. We know Dragon Pulse won't make the range, but Blizzard might. All it has to do is hit. We go for Blizzard and it hits. Ray levels up to 49 and Lance has his final Pokemon standing in our way. For Charizard, my assumption is that Thunder is capable of KOing it. I have never reached it until this point and I'm pretty sure it has a move like Dragon Claw or Dragon Pulse. But because we're faster, I guess we'll never know unless I bother to check it out online. But just one Thunder will OHKO Charizard, giving us our final victory and cementing Ray as the new champion. As always, however, Red is still going to be our biggest challenge, but before we can pay him a visit, there are still the gym leaders in Kanto waiting for us. Even though they've seen a decent buff in HeartGold and SoulSilver, Ray is still beastly and has a very deep move pool, so there's no obstacle that can't be surmounted with just swapping in TMs when we need to. One frustrating thing is, because of the rules we have for this challenge, we can't even catch or use Thief on the Snorlax to grab the leftovers, which honestly would have been really useful except in the battle against Red, but it'll become quite apparent why that is shortly. Just before Red, Blue's probably worth a mention. Due to having to chop and change movesets for the previous gym leaders, I ended up deleting Air Slash. The first Pokemon that Blue will field is his Exeggutor, and it has the move Trick Room, which will basically make it so that the slowest Pokemon will move first. And because we're in a situation where we are obviously faster and with our current moveset, unable to one-shot the Exeggutor, what generally happens is that we'll attack, Exeggutor then uses Trick Room, meaning it gets to go first next turn, and will then use Hypnosis. While we're asleep and taking damage, we're in no position, even if we make it past Exeggutor, to survive the rest of the battle. Super annoying. But then what would happen is that Blue would field the Rhydon next, and Rhydon has Stone Edge. Because we'd be on low HP from Exeggutor and Rhydon would move first, it'd immediately knock us out thanks to Stone Edge. Even if the move were to miss, because it's got such an awesome defense, even a super effective move like Earthquake wouldn't be doing enough damage. Well, I could teach Ray Blizzard, and Blizzard would, when it hits, be capable of one-shotting Exeggutor. It would also be able to do the same thing against Rhydon. Great. But then we have another problem, Gyarados. Not only does Gyarados have Intimidate, which lowers our attack, but it also has Ice Fang, which is doubled super effective. Ice Fang will do a boatload of damage so that even when we get past it, we're not surviving the rest of the battle. And because our best move is currently Dragon Pulse, it's a dice roll whether it's a two-shot. Lovely. Okay, so let's say that we then teach Ray Thunder to deal with the Gyarados. Then what? Well, we'd then see Arcanine, and Arcanine has Intimidate too. And what's our best move for that kind of Pokemon? Earthquake, but it's doing trash damage, and Arcanine has Dragon Pulse. So what happens if we're then able to beat Arcanine? Well, we then get Machamp, and Machamp has, you guessed it, Stone Edge. So we are getting defeated there too. Big oof. Basically, we need to be in a position where we are able to consistently one-shot each of Blue's Pokemon. Honestly, with our current moveset, it ain't happening. So we need to shake things up. Ultimately, we are changing up our moveset to look like this, and it required a heart scale. We've got Thunder, Dragon Pulse, Surf, and Air Slash. Like we saw with Will's Exeggutor, Air Slash is capable of handing us the one-shot, so there's no trouble there. Against Rhydon, while Blizzard is obviously a more powerful move, Surf has more utility, and because Rhydon's special defense is so poor, at the end of the day, Surf's still getting the job done. Now with Gyarados. Again, like we saw with the Elite Four, Thunder is our go-to move. In this particular battle, we end up missing our first Thunder and get extremely lucky when Gyarados uses Dragon Dance. What's even luckier is the fact that we still outspeed and our second Thunder finally hits. Arcanine is still an excellent Pokemon though. We've basically avoided all physical attacking moves now, so Intimidate is a non-issue, but Surf is still incapable of OHKOing the Arcanine. And for some reason, instead of using an attacking move, Arcanine uses Roar, which is pointless because it's just Ray in our party. Whatever, we have defeated it, meaning there are 2 Pokemon left, but we are not able to swiftly defeat Arcanine because we get stuck in a full restore loop before eventually Blue seems to run out and then we KO it. For Machamp, when we use Air Slash, it is just not capable of making the range, but we are rewarded with a clutch flinch. I'm surprised next turn because Blue does have another full restore, but like Arcanine, it's not going to matter because we are quicker and we will knock Machamp out. Just one Pokemon left, Pidgeot, and that thing really has nothing good against us. We've just got to use Thunder for it. Wow, it survived. It's paralyzed too, but I really wasn't expecting that. Doesn't really matter though. Dragon Pulse is more than capable of finishing the job. Blue's down. Now there's just red remaining. Way back at the beginning of this vid, I talked about a couple of things that would make this run possible. One of those was Ray's ability, Airlock. Airlock basically negates weather effects, which is absolutely key to this battle. When Hail is active, Blizzard will bypass accuracy checks and always hit. Like 3 of Red's Pokemon have Blizzard: Lapras, Blastoise, and Snorlax. From each of those Pokemon, Blizzard will be a one-shot for Ray. End of story. The plan I had going into this battle was this: use the rare candies that I have to increase Ray's level so that it learns Dragon Dance. We want to set up Dragon Dance on Pikachu and then potentially sweep the rest of Red's team with Dragon Claw. That was the plan. Will it work out? At level 71, we will not outspeed Red's level 88 Pikachu. And that thing has Light Ball too, which doubles Pikachu's attack and special attack. And oh boy, when that thing uses Volt Tackle, would you just look at that damage. Now, if one of Pikachu's attacks were to miss, and that's only really possible with the Bright Powder, we could use a Dragon Dance. Then we'd be quick enough to move first next turn and KO the Pikachu. But let's not forget that Pikachu also has Static, which can paralyze us too. Instant reset. So let's say we make it past. We're paralyzed, but it doesn't really matter because Lapras is out next. It'll go for Blizzard. Absolute one shot. I tried this battle again and again and again. Yep, I found out that Dragon Claw would one shot Pikachu without a Dragon Dance, but Blizzard was just not missing like ever. I started to think that Airlock wasn't working or there was some glitch where the accuracy check was still being ignored. It was crazy. I had very little options in how to proceed. I was doing the damage calculations and we required 3 Dragon Dances to make one-shotting Red's team possible because we couldn't afford to get hit and he'll send out Lapras, Blastoise, Snorlax in that order. And don't get me started on his remaining team after that. The only thing really was just going around and gathering the remaining rare candies that I could. Without battling a trainer to access them, I think there are about 18 in total that you can get. We can take Ray up to level 76, but that is it. There is no way for us to reach a higher level. I was really scraping the bottom of the barrel with ideas. One idea that worked in Gen 2 with, I want to say, Suicune was using Roar. In Gen 2, Roar would go first and drag a random Pokemon out. Back then, I'd use that to pull out an ineffective Pokemon which allowed me to set up and then sweep. The plan here was to ideally bring out Venusaur. 2 issues in this gen. Roar will go last, meaning you're taking a hit, making it pretty pointless. Because even if we got Venusaur, which we do on one occasion, it can then use a move like Sludge Bomb and then that will finish us off. Pointless. So honestly, what could I do here? We are not one-shotting anything without setting up 3 Dragon Dances. Like, I was thinking of going without Rage at one point, but we'd still need to set up and then we're getting confused afterwards. Maybe you could have had a berry for that? Swords Dance? Maybe that could have worked, but I think our speed needs a boost because the other Pokemon will then get the drop on us. Substitute? Maybe that could have worked. Swagger? It was a last resort because you're leaving it so much to look. I don't know. I just thought maybe if I kept trying, we'd eventually get a Blizzard miss. Because honestly, up until this point, I don't think I'd ever seen it miss. But just before I was going to go away and think again, I got this battle. First off, against Pikachu, I go for Dragon Claw. At this level, it's a one-shot and we are now definitely faster than Pikachu. We knock it out and don't see that paralysis. The same start I've had dozens of times, but now we've got Lapras. None of our moves will one-shot it outside of a crit. I go for Thunder anyway. I was hoping for the paralysis and doing something from there. It hits, does good damage, but it's just not enough. But then Blizzard misses. And I'm thinking here, do I go for Dragon Dance? I was tempted, but instead I ended up using Dragon Claw because I figure it doesn't really matter. Blastoise will come out and use Blizzard and we're done anyway. So we knock it out and out comes Snorlax. Okay, more so than before, I'm really struggling to think of a play here. I'm going through Dragon Claw, Thunder, Dragon Dance. I have no idea. I think, what the hell, and just go for a Dragon Dance. Snorlax uses Blizzard and it misses. I immediately go for Dragon Claw next turn. It hits, does over half, but doesn't quite knock Snorlax out. Not good. But then Blizzard misses again. And I can't believe it. So again, I'm just looking at my moves, thinking, what should I risk doing next? I really want to go for that Dragon Dance. In the end, I just go with it. another boost, and another Blizzard Miss from Snorlax. I honestly do not believe the luck. So I'm like, now we've really got to knock this thing out. Our luck cannot hold up. So we attack, and of course, Snorlax is knocked out. And I'm expecting Red to send out Blastoise finally, but he ends up switching into Charizard instead. After 3 Dragon Dances, surely Dragon Claw should easily knock this thing out. Dragon Claw leaves Charizard on a sliver of health, red bar. Then we get hit with Dragon Pulse, or rather, we don't because of Bright Powder, and I can't believe it. Red would then go for a full restore next turn, but that shouldn't matter. I just stick with Extreme Speed because it's doing just enough to knock Charizard out a couple of turns later. Now, finally, here is Blastoise. If Dragon Claw didn't knock Charizard out, there is no way it'll knock Blastoise out, right? We come oh so close, but no, it just can't finish the job. And there is another Blizzard Miss. What is going on? Next turn, Red then ends up healing Blastoise, but I don't think that should matter because the next time we use Dragon Claw, it ends up critting and defeating Blastoise. This means there's just one Pokemon left, Venusaur, and we have not taken a single hit point of damage this entire battle. Against Venusaur, I use Dragon Claw once again, and again, it is not doing just enough damage, and this thing is barely clinging on. It uses Sludge Bomb, it doesn't do over half, but it does poison us, and that damage starts to stack. We see another full restore. I don't know if we can tank enough to finish it off. I just go for Dragon Claw, and it hits, and it crits, and that is the battle. Like, I know we had Bright Powder, and that thing saved us in the end, but I only think it knocks 10% accuracy off an opponent's moves. But to get that Dragon Pulse miss, which absolutely mattered because Venusaur would have KO'd us, along with all those Blizzard misses, is insanity. I do not want to think about the statistical odds of that happening. But hey, maybe you could have made the run even easier. Feel free to let me know. And if you have an idea for an interesting run in the same style, let me know. And if you want to like and subscribe, go for it. Until next time, have a good one.